Logger finds giant knot in tree. Something made him cut and the dog is startled to see. Walter Thompson was drenched in sweat as he walked through the property inherited from his father-in-law, carrying his axe as he had done for over 40 years. His routine of cutting firewood to sell in Springfield had become his only source of income since the local sawmill closed, leaving him jobless at 52. It was when he stopped in front of the large, centuries-old tree that he had always avoided cutting out of respect for the memory of Margaret, his wife who had passed away 5 years earlier. But this time, something caught his attention in a strange way. There was a gigantic, deformed knot growing in the middle of the trunk, something he had never seen in 4 decades of cutting wood. "What a strange thing," he murmured, approaching slowly. Buddy, his faithful 8-year-old German shepherd, began barking desperately, trying to keep him away from that tree. The dog ran in circles, growled, and tugged hard on Walter's pant leg, something totally out of character for the gentle animal. "Easy, Buddy, easy," said Walter, petting the dog's head. "What's got you so worked up?" But something about that abnormal growth attracted him in a way he couldn't explain. It was as if an invisible force was pulling him closer. The knot seemed to pulsate. It had a texture different from the rest of the bark, softer and with a strange color. Walter raised the axe, hesitant. Buddy barked even louder, as if begging him not to do it. "I'm sorry, Margaret," he whispered, looking up at the sky. "But I need to understand what this is." The first axe blow made a hollow, different sound. The second opened a small crack. With the third, Buddy began to howl in a way that sent a chill down Walter's spine. When he finally cut the knot away completely, he found something inside that made him stagger backward. A rusty metal box was there, as if the tree had grown around it for years. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing old photographs yellowed with time and folded documents. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, as we're just starting, now continuing. The first photograph made Walter's legs feel weak. It was Margaret, his Margaret, but 20 years younger, smiling next to a man he didn't recognize. They seemed close. She was wearing a dress Walter had never seen and was holding the stranger's hand. "This can't be true," he murmured, his hands shaking. There were more photos. Margaret and that man at a picnic, hugging in front of a church, him kissing her forehead. In the background of one photo, Walter could recognize the landscape. It was exactly where they were now, only the tree was much smaller. Buddy had stopped barking but stayed by Walter's side, panting and restless, as if sensing his owner's anguish. Walter picked up the documents with trembling hands. The first was a birth certificate. He read the name several times before he could process the information. Margaret Ann Wilson had been born 3 years earlier than she had always said. The date showed that when they married, she was already 25, not 22, as he had always believed. More documents revealed even bigger secrets. There was a marriage certificate between Margaret and the man in the photos, dated 10 years before her marriage to Walter. The man's name was Richard Miller. "Margaret was married before," Walter said aloud, needing to hear the words to believe them. "And she never told me." Buddy sniffed the box and backed away, growling softly. There was something else at the bottom, wrapped in an old cloth. Walter carefully unwrapped it and found a man's wedding ring, much more expensive than his own, and a sealed letter. The discovery left him deeply disturbed. 40 years of marriage. 40 years sharing the same bed, dreams, and difficulties. And Margaret had never mentioned a word about this past. He had always known she had come from another city to marry him, but he assumed she had been single. He walked back home like a ghost, carrying the box and followed by Buddy, who kept looking back as if something were following them. The house seemed different now, every object filled with doubt. The photographs of Margaret on the wall smiled at him, but now Walter questioned if he really knew that woman. He sat at the kitchen table where they had so often had coffee together and opened the letter with trembling fingers. "My love, if you are reading this, it means the inevitable has happened. I kept this secret all these years to protect us, but the time for truth has come. Richard is not just my past, he is our present, our future, our threat. The money he gave me wasn't a gift, it was a payment for my silence. If anything happens to me, look for our daughter Amanda. She needs to know that you are not—" The letter ended there, cut off abruptly, as if Margaret had been interrupted. Walter felt the world spin. Amanda, his only daughter, 30 years old, had always been the joy of the house. Margaret got pregnant just a few months after the wedding, and they celebrated it as a gift from heaven. But now this letter suggested something impossible to accept. "No, no, no," he repeated, shaking his head. "Amanda is my daughter. She looks like me. She has my eyes." Buddy came over and put his head on Walter's lap, as if sensing his pain. The phone rang, startling him. It was Amanda. "Hi, Dad. I'm glad you answered. I need to talk to you urgently. Can I come over today?" "Of course, honey," replied Walter, trying to keep his voice steady. "Is something wrong?" "It's about the house, Dad. You know Brian lost his job last month, right? And now with the baby coming," her voice faltered, "we need to sell the land." Walter's world completely collapsed. Amanda was pregnant and wanted to sell the exact property where that tree held all these secrets, as if she knew something was hidden there. "Sell? But honey, that land is all we have from the family. Your mother loved that place." "Dad, we don't have a choice. Brian's debts are huge. He invested everything we had in some business deals that went wrong. If we don't sell, we'll lose our house too." After hanging up, Walter looked at the photographs with new eyes. He searched for similarities between Amanda and that man, Richard Miller. The shape of the face, the smile, the eyes. To his despair, he began to find some. He spent the entire afternoon looking at old photos of Amanda as a child, comparing them with images of Richard. Buddy remained by his side the whole time, like a silent guardian of his pain. When Amanda arrived in the late afternoon, Walter quickly put the documents away. She was accompanied by Brian, her husband of 5 years, a young man from a good family who had always treated Walter with respect. "Dad, you look terrible," said Amanda, hugging him. "Did something happen?" "No, honey, it's just work fatigue." Brian avoided Walter's gaze, clearly embarrassed about the financial situation. "Mr. Thompson, I know it's not easy, but we really don't have another option," said Brian. "I've already spoken to a realtor, and he said the land has potential to be worth a lot, mainly because of the preserved green area." "Will the big tree have to be cut down?" asked Walter. "Probably, Dad. The buyer will want to clear the land for construction." Walter felt a tightness in his chest. He couldn't let that tree be cut down, not before discovering the whole truth. "And who is this buyer?" "Actually, an interested party showed up just today," said Amanda. "An older gentleman, very elegant. He said he knew Mom from way back, and that he always wanted to have a property in this region." Walter's blood ran cold. "What's his name?" Richard Miller." "Why, Dad? Do you know him?" Buddy, who was lying in the corner of the room, quickly got up and started to growl softly, as if he had heard the name. Walter disguised his shock. "No, never heard of him, just curious, that's all." But inside his mind was racing. It couldn't be a coincidence. Richard Miller showing up right now, offering to buy the land where Margaret had buried secrets about them. There was something very wrong with this story. "He wants to come here tomorrow to see the land," Amanda continued. "He said he can pay in cash, an amount well above what we expected." "What amount?" $300,000, Dad. It's much more than anyone else would pay for this small piece of land." $300,000 was a life-changing amount for Amanda and Brian, especially with a baby on the way. Walter knew he couldn't be selfish, but he also couldn't allow Richard to get his hands on the secrets Margaret had hidden. That night, after Amanda and Brian had left, Walter went back to the tree with a flashlight. Buddy followed him reluctantly, stopping several times as if he wanted to go back home. The hole dug into the tree knot looked like a wound in the wood. Walter shone the light inside and saw there were more things in there. Carefully, he removed more documents and some jewels wrapped in cloth. Among the jewels, he found a necklace he recognized immediately. It was the necklace Margaret wore on special Sundays, the one she said she got from her mother, but there was a note attached. "For Margaret, with all my love. Richard." Even the jewels she said were family heirlooms were gifts from that man. Walter sat on the ground, leaning against the tree, and began to read the remaining documents. They were letters, many letters, exchanged between Margaret and Richard over the years. even after her marriage to Walter. The first letter was dated just 2 months after the wedding. "Dear Margaret, I know you've made your choice, but I can't forget our love. Walter seems like a good man, and I respect your decision to start a new life. I just want you to know that I will always be here if you need anything. The money I left with you is to ensure that you and the child never go without." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The child. Richard knew about Margaret's pregnancy. Walter kept reading with his heart pounding. "Fie, love. You can't ask me to forget that Amanda is also my daughter. I know you chose to give her Walter's last name, and I accept that for her own good. But one day she will need to know the truth about her origins. When she grows up, when she's an adult woman, she deserves to know her biological father." Walter's hands were shaking so much he could barely hold the paper. Amanda was not his biological daughter. 30 years of his life had been built on a lie. Buddy came closer and rested his head on his knee, as if he understood the pain he was feeling. There were more letters, documenting the parallel relationship Margaret maintained with Richard during all the early years of her marriage to Walter. She would meet with Richard whenever he came to Springfield on business. Walter discovered that many of the trips Margaret took to visit her supposed aunt in New York were actually meetings with Richard. The last letter was from just 6 years ago, shortly before Margaret got sick. "Richard, you need to stop insisting. I will not tell Amanda who her real father is. She is happy, she has a family, she's getting married soon. Walter is the only father she has ever known, and that's what matters. If you really love me, you'll respect my decision and never look for our daughter again. The money you've been sending me all these years was enough to give her a good life. But now it's over. I don't want anything more from you." Walter finally understood why Margaret always had more money than she should. The small luxuries she was able to provide for the family, the better clothes for Amanda, the English lessons, the Sweet 16 party that seemed too expensive for their budget. Everything had been financed by Richard. A sound of breaking branches made Buddy jump and start barking. Walter quickly turned off the flashlight and stayed silent. Someone was approaching. Careful footsteps were walking through the woods. Buddy growled softly, and Walter held him by the neck to keep him quiet. "I know you're there," said a male voice. "I saw the flashlight light." Walter didn't answer, his heart pounding. "My name is Richard Miller. I think we need to talk." After a few seconds of silence, Walter turned the flashlight back on, illuminating a man of about 60 with graying hair, well-dressed even in the middle of the woods. "How did you find me here?" "I've known this place for a long time," said Richard, approaching slowly. "Margaret brought me here several times in the past. This is where she decided to hide our secrets when she started to feel guilty about the relationship we were having." Buddy kept growling constantly, and Walter kept a firm hand on the animal's neck. "So you really are the Richard from the letters?" "I am. And you must have discovered many unpleasant things today." "Amanda is your daughter," said Walter, more as a statement than a question. "Biologically, yes, but in my heart she was always yours. Margaret made sure of that." Richard sat on a nearby rock, keeping a respectful distance. "Why do you want to buy the land now?" "Because I'm old, Walter. I have cancer, and the doctors have given me a few months to live. I want to make sure these secrets are buried with me." "And Amanda, will she never know you're her biological father?" "That's a decision that's up to you now. Margaret made me promise to respect your wishes, and all these years I've kept that promise, but now she's gone and you've discovered the truth." Walter looked at the documents scattered around him. "Why did Margaret do this? Why did she lie to me all these years?" "Because she loved you," said Richard, his voice heavy with sadness. "When we broke up, she was pregnant and desperate. I offered to get married, but she said she couldn't live in a big city, far from her family. When she met you, she saw a chance to have a simple, honest life. But she kept seeing you. In the first few years, yes, she felt she owed it to Amanda, that her daughter deserved to know her biological father in some way. But as time passed, Margaret realized she was creating an unsustainable situation. That's when she decided to end it for good." Richard took a photograph from his pocket. This is the last picture we took together 7 years ago. She told me it would be our last meeting. In the photo, Margaret looked thinner, more tired. Her face showed the weight of the secrets she carried. She was starting to get sick, Richard continued. I offered to pay for the best treatment, the best doctors, but she refused. She said she would rather die in peace by your side than live with the guilt of having lied to you. Buddy had stopped growling but remained alert. And now you want to buy the land to bury this story along with you? Exactly. With the money from the sale, Amanda and her husband can start a new life without debts, and these secrets will stay with me. Walter thought for a few minutes, hearing only the sound of night insects and Buddy's heavy breathing. What if I don't want to sell? Then I will respect your decision. But think about what's best for your daughter, Walter. She doesn't need to know about these complications from the past. Margaret made her choice 30 years ago, and it worked out. Amanda grew up happy, became a good woman, found a good husband. Why destroy that now? Because she is my daughter, regardless of who the biological father is. Exactly, said Richard, smiling for the first time, and that's why Margaret chose you. She knew you would be a better father than I ever could be. The two men stayed silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. I need time to think, Walter finally said. Of course, but don't take too long. Like I said, my time is limited. Richard got up to leave, but stopped. One last thing, Walter. Margaret told me you always wanted to have more children, but she could never get pregnant again. That's true. She had surgery so she couldn't have more children without telling you. She didn't want to risk you finding out that Amanda wasn't biologically yours through some medical exam during a new pregnancy. Another secret revealed. Margaret had given up the possibility of having more children to protect the lie she had built. After Richard left, Walter stayed alone in the woods with Buddy, surrounded by the wreckage of his former life. Everything he had believed to be true for the last 30 years was an elaborate construction of well-intentioned lies. Back at home, he couldn't sleep. He spent the night looking at old photos of Amanda, trying to understand how he hadn't noticed the similarities with Richard. The next morning, Amanda showed up early for breakfast, excited about the possibility of the sale. Dad, Mr. Richard will be here soon to see the land. Are you okay? You look like you didn't sleep. I didn't sleep, daughter. I was thinking about this sale. Dad, I know it's hard. This land has a lot of memories of Mom, but she would understand. She always wanted the best for us. If she only knew how much truth there was in those words. Amanda, can I ask you a strange question? Of course, Dad. Have you ever wondered about your origins, about how you look like me? Amanda laughed. What a strange question. Of course I've thought about it. Everyone always says I look more like Mom physically, but that I have your way of being, your personality. Why are you asking that? Before Walter could answer, Buddy started barking outside. Richard had arrived. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. When Richard entered the room, Walter watched Amanda's reaction closely. She greeted him normally, without showing any sign of recognition or strangeness, but Walter began to notice details he had never seen before. The way Amanda gestured when she talked looked a lot like Richard's movements, the shape of her hands, her way of smiling. Miss, it's a pleasure to meet you in person, said Richard. Your mother spoke of you often in the few times we met. Oh, you knew my mother? Asked Amanda, interested. I did, yes, a long time ago. We were neighbors when she lived in New York before she married your father. A lie. They were never neighbors, but Richard was creating a plausible story to explain the familiarity. That's so cool. Mom never talked much about the time she lived there. During the visit to the land, Walter watched Richard interact with Amanda. The man asked questions about her life, the plans for the baby, her husband's work, showing an interest that seemed more paternal than commercial. Buddy kept his distance from Richard, growling softly whenever he approached the tree with the cut stump. This tree is magnificent, said Richard, touching the trunk. How old do you think it is? Over 100 for sure, replied Walter, watching his reaction. Margaret always said this tree was special. Your wife was right. Trees like this hold many stories. The play on words didn't go unnoticed by Walter. When they returned home, Richard made an even more generous offer. $350,000 cash. I can transfer the money today if we reach an agreement. Amanda was speechless. It was far more money than she ever imagined seeing in her life. Mr. Richard, that is very generous, but why so much interest in this specific piece of land? Like I said, I knew your mother a long time ago. This place has sentimental value for me too. After Richard left, Amanda couldn't contain her excitement. Dad, with this money we can pay off all our debts, buy a new house for me and Brian, and there will still be plenty left for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. And what if I don't want to sell, daughter? Amanda stopped smiling. Dad, I know it's hard, but think about the baby that's coming. Think about Brian, who's unemployed. We can't let this opportunity pass. That afternoon, alone again, Walter returned to the tree. He needed to decide what to do with all that information. Buddy followed him, but this time he didn't show any resistance. Sitting in the same spot as the night before, Walter reread all the letters. The love story between Margaret and Richard was evident, but it was also clear how much Margaret had fought to build a new life with him. One letter in particular caught his attention. It was from Margaret to Richard, written about 15 years ago. My dearest, I know you don't understand my decision, but I need you to know that I chose Walter not for a lack of love for you, but because the love I feel for him is different. With you, I lived an intense passion, but also a constant anguish. With Walter, I found peace, stability, a quiet love that allows me to be happy every day. Amanda is growing up surrounded by affection and solid values. Walter is the father she deserves to have. These words brought a little peace to Walter's wounded heart. Margaret had truly chosen him, not just out of convenience, but out of love. His phone rang. It was Dr. Michael, the town veterinarian, and a longtime friend. Walter, I need to speak with you about Buddy. The tests we ran yesterday came back abnormal. What tests? I didn't take Buddy for any tests. You didn't, but Amanda brought him in this morning. She said he'd been acting strange for a few days. Walter was confused. Why would Amanda take Buddy to the vet without talking to him? What did the tests show? Buddy inhaled spores from a rare fungus, which only grows on very old, rotting wood. It's strange, because that type of fungus isn't common in our area. The tree's not. Buddy had inhaled something when Walter cut the knot. Is it serious? It can be, if left untreated. Where could he have been exposed to deteriorated wood recently? Walter couldn't talk about the tree without revealing the whole story. I don't know, Doctor. We walk all over the property. Well, I'll give him a treatment, but it's important to find the source of the contamination to prevent further exposure. After hanging up, Walter grew worried. Buddy was sick because of him, because he had cut that knot. It was as if the tree was demanding a price for revealing its secrets. The next day, Walter received an unexpected visit. It was Jennifer, Margaret's sister, who had lived in New York for over 20 years. Walter, I heard from Amanda that you're going to sell the land. I need to talk to you about this. Of course, Jennifer, come in, let's have some coffee. Jennifer seemed nervous, constantly fidgeting with her hands. Walter, I know about Richard. His blood ran cold. You know what about Richard? I know he was Margaret's first husband. I know that Amanda is his daughter. Walter sat down heavily in the chair. Did Margaret tell you? Yes, she did, just before she left. She was worried. She said that Richard had been insisting on getting to know Amanda better, on telling her the truth. And do you think I should tell Amanda? Jennifer shook her head. No, Walter. Margaret made her choice 30 years ago, and it was the right choice. Amanda is your daughter in every way that matters. There's no need to destroy that now. But she has the right to know the truth about her origins. Does she? Questioned Jennifer. What good will it do her now? It will only create confusion and unnecessary pain. Buddy approached Jennifer, who petted him affectionately. This dog has always been very smart. I remember when Margaret first started getting sick, he wouldn't leave her side. Jennifer, there's one more thing. Richard said he's sick, that he has cancer and doesn't have much time. It's true. Margaret found out in the last few months of her life. That's why she decided to tell me everything. She was afraid of what he might do after she was gone. Afraid of what? Afraid that he would seek out Amanda, tell her the truth, try to have a relationship with her. Margaret always said that Richard was a good man, but very impulsive. He made a fortune in business, but he was always a person who acts from the heart, not from reason. Walter thought about that. Richard really did seem to be driven by his feelings, so much so that he had maintained a secret relationship with Margaret for years. "And do you think I should sell the land to him?" "I think you should do what's best for Amanda. That money could change her life for the better. And if Richard wants to bury the past with him, maybe that's the best solution for everyone." That night, Walter made a decision. He called Amanda and asked her to come with Brian the next day for an important conversation. When they arrived, Walter greeted them in the living room, with Buddy by his side. "Daughter, I've decided to accept Mr. Richard's offer," Amanda shouted with joy and hugged her father. "Dad, you made the right decision. We'll be able to start our lives over." "But I have a few conditions," Walter continued. "What conditions?" "First, I want you to buy a house nearby. I don't want you to move away. Second, I want to help take care of my grandson when he's born. And third, I want you to know that no matter what difficulties you face in life, you can always count on me." Brian, who had been quiet during the whole conversation, approached Walter. "Mr. Walter, I know I've made mistakes, that I lost money on bad investments, but I promise I will work hard to be a good husband to Amanda and a good father to our son. And I will always respect you as the child's grandfather. I know, son, we all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them." On the day of the deed signing, Richard arrived with a lawyer. The documents were prepared quickly and the money transfer was done right away. When all the papers were signed, Richard asked to speak with Walter in private. "Thank you for this, Walter. I know it wasn't an easy decision." "It certainly wasn't. But it was the right decision for Amanda. Can I ask you a favor?" "Go ahead." "When I'm gone, I'd like you to tell Amanda that she had two fathers who loved her very much. You don't need to go into details, but let her know that she was very much loved." Walter was moved by the request. "You can count on it. I'll tell her. And you can tell her that the money from the land sale is actually an inheritance I left for her. An inheritance from someone who always wanted the best for her, even from afar." Richard handed an envelope to Walter. "Here are all the other letters and documents I had saved. Now they are yours. You can destroy them, keep them, or do whatever you think is best." After Richard left, Walter returned to the tree one last time. The cut knot was beginning to scar over, the bark growing back to cover the wound. Buddy accompanied him, but this time showed no signs of anxiety. Dr. Michael's treatment had worked, and he was fully recovered. Walter gathered all the documents he had found in the tree with the ones Richard had given him. It was a considerable stack of papers documenting 30 years of secrets. He thought about burning it all, but decided to keep it. One day, when Amanda was older, when his son had grown up, perhaps she would want to know the full story of her origins. 6 months later, Amanda gave birth to a healthy boy whom they named William after his grandfather. Walter fell in love with his grandson from the very first moment and realized that being a grandfather was a joy he had never imagined. The house that Amanda and Brian bought was just 10 minutes from the property where Walter continued to live. He built a small playground in the backyard for when William grew up and could play there. Buddy, fully recovered, became the baby's official guardian, following Amanda whenever she came to visit with the child. One day, when William was 8 months old, a letter arrived for Walter. It was from a lawyer in Chicago, informing him of the passing of Richard Miller and conveying his final instructions. Richard had created an education fund for William, ensuring the child could study at the best schools when he grew up. He also left a letter to be given to Amanda when she turned 40. Walter stored the letter with the other documents. He still didn't know if he would ever give everything to Amanda, but he liked knowing he had that option. Life went on as normal for the next few years. Brian got a job at a construction company and proved to be a dedicated worker. Walter continued cutting wood, but now more calmly, working only a few days a week to have time to care for his grandson. Buddy aged gracefully, becoming an even more loyal and affectionate companion. Whenever Walter passed by the old tree, The dog accompanied him without any signs of anxiety. The tree had completely healed where the knot was cut. New bark covered the area, as if nothing had ever happened there. Sometimes Walter wondered if it all hadn't been a strange dream. But then he would look at William playing in the yard, see Amanda smiling as she rocked her son, watch Brian striving to be a good father and husband, and he knew he had made the right decision. The secrets of the past would remain buried, allowing the new generation to grow up without the weight of the complications that had marked the previous one. On a particularly beautiful afternoon, with William already walking and exploring the yard under Buddy's watchful eye, Walter sat on the porch and reflected on everything that had happened. Margaret had made difficult choices to protect the family she had built. Richard had respected those choices, even while carrying the pain of not being able to know his daughter better. And he, Walter, had chosen to preserve Amanda's happiness above his own need for transparency. They weren't perfect choices, but they were choices made with love. William stumbled while running and started to cry. Amanda picked him up, comforting him tenderly. Brian arrived home from work at that moment and took his son into his arms, making funny faces that soon turned the crying into laughter. Buddy barked happily, running in circles around the family. Walter smiled, feeling his heart full of peace. The old tree swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, its deep roots supporting not only its own trunk, but the entire story of love, sacrifice, and forgiveness that had grown around it. And Walter knew that Margaret would be proud of the choices he had made. After all, both he and Richard had put Amanda's well-being above everything else, exactly as she had always wanted. The sun set that day, painting the sky orange and pink, as 3 generations of the family enjoyed another peaceful afternoon together. Buddy lay down at Walter's feet, sighed contentedly, and closed his eyes. The secrets were at peace, buried along with those who had carried them, and life, in all its imperfect beauty, continued its natural course. End of story. And you? What did you think of this story of love, forgiveness, and sacrifice? Did Walter make the right choice by keeping Margaret's secrets? Tell us your opinion in the comments. We really want to know what you think. Don't forget to leave your like if the story moved you, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one. Your participation is essential for us to continue bringing these narratives that speak straight to the heart.